stands as one of the world's most intricate regions, marred by the presence of 4 failing states and 3 ongoing wars. Major global powers increasingly find themselves on opposing sides, escalating tensions. Amidst this chaos, numerous armed militias and terrorist factions sow violence transcending borders. With a history of conflict stretching back to the 20th century, 2 countries consistently emerge at the forefront: Saudi Arabia and Iran. Their bitter rivalry serves as a linchpin for understanding the region's conflicts. Subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments below which part of the world you're from. Let's go. Despite never formally declaring war, Saudi Arabia and Iran engage in indirect confrontations by backing opposing factions and fueling conflicts in other nations, a tactic known as proxy warfare. This approach has wreaked havoc on the region, impeding the progress of countries, particularly those already struggling economically, as external powers manipulate their internal affairs. For both Saudi Arabia and Iran, these civil wars represent both significant threats and potential avenues for expanding influence. The Saudi-Iranian rivalry epitomizes a struggle for dominance, turning the entire Middle East into a battleground akin to a Cold War scenario. Drawing parallels to the 40-year standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union, both Saudi Arabia and Iran vie for control, albeit within a regional context rather than global supremacy. Like their superpower predecessors, they avoid direct confrontation, instead opting for proxy conflicts and support for various factions to advance their interests. To comprehend the origins of this rivalry, one must delve into the early history of each nation. In the early 1900s, the Arabian Peninsula comprised disparate tribes under Ottoman rule. Following the collapse of the empire post-World War I, these tribes vied for dominance. The Al Saud tribe, hailing from the interior, eventually emerged triumphant, establishing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932. 6 years later, Saudi Arabia's fortunes changed dramatically with the discovery of vast oil reserves, catapulting the Saudi monarchy into immense wealth virtually overnight. This newfound oil wealth fueled extensive infrastructure development, transforming the desert landscape with roads and cities and solidifying an alliance with the United States. Across the Persian Gulf, Iran was also emerging as a significant player, albeit facing considerable challenges. Despite possessing substantial oil reserves and a sizable Muslim population, Iran grappled with persistent foreign interventions that plunged the nation into turmoil. Throughout its history, Iran endured invasions by the Russians and British, with the United States orchestrating a covert coup in 1953 that ousted the popular Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, and installed Reza Shah, who pursued aggressive Western-oriented reforms. However, Reza Shah's regime was marred by corruption and brutality, particularly through the notorious secret police force, the Savak. By the 1970s, both Saudi Arabia and Iran boasted oil-driven economies and enjoyed strong backing from the United States. However, sentiments among their respective populations diverged significantly. While the Saudi monarchy garnered widespread support and affection from its people, the Shah of Iran struggled to maintain control and legitimacy, facing mounting opposition, especially from the Muslim community, who felt marginalized by his secular reforms. The turning point came in 1979 with Iran's Islamic Revolution, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, a prominent Muslim cleric who advocated for a popular Islamic government led by clergy. Khomeini's revolution overthrew the Shah's regime, sending shockwaves across the international community and particularly rattling Saudi Arabia. The Saudi government feared Khomeini's revolutionary fervor would incite their own population to revolt, posing a significant threat to their rule. Moreover, Khomeini's assertion of Iran as the legitimate Muslim state challenged Saudi Arabia's claim to leadership in the Muslim world, compounded by the Sunni-Shia divide between the two nations. While Saudi Arabia predominantly adhered to Sunni Islam, Khomeini's Iran represented Shia Islam, adding another layer of religious and ideological tension to their rivalry. In summary, the Iranian Revolution of 1979 marked the beginning of heightened tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran, driven by religious, ideological, and geopolitical factors that continue to shape the dynamics of the Middle East to this day. Contrary to popular belief, The Sunni-Shia split was not inherently violent, and in many instances communities coexisted harmoniously. However, it did serve as a significant division, albeit not the primary cause of rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Following the Iranian Revolution, Saudi Arabia's apprehensions materialized as Iran began spreading its revolutionary ideology beyond its borders. A 1980 CIA report revealed Iran's support for Shia groups aiming to overthrow governments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia, prompting Saudi Arabia to intensify its efforts to counter Iran's influence. Strengthening its alliance with the US and forming the GCC with other Gulf monarchies, Saudi Arabia positioned itself for conflict. The stage was set for the Gulf War. In September 1980, Iraq, led by dictator Saddam Hussein, invaded Iran, hoping to curb the Iranian Revolution and expand its own power. Despite initially superior forces, the war devolved into a brutal stalemate marked by trench warfare, chemical weapons, and significant civilian casualties. When Iran gained the upper hand, Saudi Arabia intervened on behalf of Iraq, providing crucial support to prolong the conflict and contain Iran's influence. The Saudi-backed Iraqi regime continued to face challenges, culminating in the US invasion in 2003 and the subsequent overthrow of Saddam Hussein. Both Saudi Arabia and Iran opposed the invasion, fearing the destabilization of Iraq, which had served as a buffer between them. However, the US's missteps in post-invasion governance created a vacuum, plunging Iraq into sectarian violence and paving the way for the rise of armed militias. With the absence of a functioning government, armed militias emerged, representing both Sunni and Shia factions, vying for power amid the chaos. Radical Islamist groups seized the opportunity to assert control, becoming proxies for Saudi Arabia and Iran. The Saudis backed Sunni militias, while Iran supported Shia counterparts, turning Iraq into a battleground for their regional rivalry. This trend persisted into the Arab Spring of 2011, which saw a wave of protests across the Middle East, calling for democratic reforms. Saudi Arabia and Iran continued their proxy interventions, further exacerbating tensions and perpetuating conflict in the region. The consequences of these actions differed significantly for Saudi Arabia and Iran. For Saudi Arabia, the prospect of regional instability is deeply unsettling. As the ultimate status quo power, Saudi Arabia aims to maintain stability in the region and prevent any challenges to autocratic regimes, fearing that such upheavals could incite similar movements within its own borders. On the other hand, Iran represents the ultimate anti-status quo power, striving for decades to upend the established regional order. Both countries have thrown their support behind various groups across the Middle East, further fueling tensions. In countries like Iraq, Tunisia, Bahrain, Libya, Lebanon, and Morocco, Saudi Arabia and Iran have backed opposing factions, exacerbating existing conflicts and contributing to the collapse of governance structures. The rivalry has escalated with direct military interventions by both Saudi Arabia and Iran. In Yemen, the Saudi military supports the central government against Houthi rebels, an Iranian proxy group. Conversely, in Syria, Iran's military aids dictator Bashar al-Assad alongside militias like Hezbollah, combating rebel Sunni groups backed by Saudi Arabia. As civil wars proliferate in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Iran find themselves increasingly embroiled. Despite neither government seeking outright conflict, unforeseen circumstances arising from these conflicts threaten their vital national interests. This has led to a Cold War scenario drawing in other countries, with Saudi Arabia threatening Qatar over its ties with Iran, and both nations vying for control of territories formerly held by ISIS in Syria and Iraq. The unpredictability of this Cold War dynamic underscores the precarious situation in the Middle East. As the region continues to destabilize, the extent of Saudi Arabia and Iran's involvement and the potential consequences remain uncertain. In conclusion, the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran has deeply influenced the dynamics of the Middle East, contributing to regional instability and conflict. As the ultimate status quo power, Saudi Arabia seeks to maintain stability and prevent challenges to autocratic regimes, while Iran, as the ultimate anti-status quo power, aims to overturn the established regional order. This rivalry has led to significant consequences across the Middle East, with both countries supporting opposing factions in various conflicts, exacerbating tensions and contributing to the collapse of governance structures in several countries. Direct military interventions by Saudi Arabia and Iran have further escalated the situation, drawing in other countries and intensifying the Cold War-like atmosphere in the region. As the Middle East continues to grapple with civil wars and geopolitical rivalries, the future remains uncertain. The unpredictable nature of the situation underscores the urgent need for diplomatic solutions and regional cooperation to address the root causes of conflict and promote stability. To stay updated on developments in the Middle East and explore more in-depth analyses of regional dynamics, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And for further insights into the complexities of the region, check out our suggested video linked in the description below. Subscribe to our channel for more content on global affairs and geopolitical analysis. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Click here to watch our suggested video.